So, the spoilers are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 405, and let's just say that it's finally about to begin the final fight with the final boss, and you'll get to see who that's going to be. But first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to cover the spoilers for the most recent chapter of My Hero Academia. And from what we get with the spoilers so far, this is going to be a very Bakugo-centered chapter, especially with what we're going to be getting at the end, as well as we're going to get a little bit more information about how Bakugo actually got to the point that he is right now in the manga, and just wrapping up some loose plot threads that were set up earlier in the manga. So, let's dive right into the spoilers and talk a little bit more about them. And starting off, the title of this chapter is about to be called Chapter 405 Final Boss. And you may be wondering, well, what is going to be going on with Tomura Shigaraki or All For One in this chapter? And to my response will be, just hold on a moment. Because the chapter begins with All Might and Night Eye in a white background. Night Eye confirms that this was supposed to be the gruesome death he foresaw, the end of All Might's dream. However, he managed to twist fate and keep his promise to Deku. All Might smiles and jokingly says that the mentor's role should be to die and let their disciples take care of the rest. But Night Eye calls him Toshinori Yagi and says that's just a comic book archetype. Heroes are people too, and they don't die that easily. Bakugo and All Might land on top of the building. Two kids comment on his explosion quirk. The "can't you see it" boy remembers that he was kidnapped by the League. Some civilians recognize him from the sports festival, and Mahoro and Katsuma shout "Bakugo!" And with just this initial part of the chapter, we get the loose end that is tied up about what the gruesome death All Might was supposed to sustain was confirmed to be his fight with All For One. And we can talk a little bit more about how this makes sense within the story of My Hero Academia and the idea of going against fate leads to disaster, but flowing with it can be more beneficial. But I'll save more of that for the review. But from what we're seeing with the spoilers, we are going to get a little bit more closure between All Might and Night Eye that we didn't get earlier on in the story, as well as people recognizing that Bakugo is getting involved in this war, which is going to give a little bit more credence to what's going to potentially happen later on in the story when it comes to Bakugo being most likely a well-known hero and being one of the greatest heroes in the world alongside Deku. And getting more into the next part of the tech spoilers, All Might asks if Bakugo is okay, and he says, "right back at you." Bakugo then spits out blood, and a tiny edge shot comes out from his chest. He says that he made Bakugo spit out some of the blood that had accumulated inside his chest and falls to the ground. He used his own body to mend the broken bones and injured organs, but Bakugo will continue to feel an excruciating pain. It's not an ideal body for fighting. Bakugo says that he knows that very well and thanks his quote senpai for allowing him to continue living. However, it wasn't Edge Shot that brought Bakugo back. Even after repairing his body, his heart didn't start beating again. When Edge Shot was almost out of strength, a drop of sweat ran through Bakugo's bloodstream and exploded inside of him, activating his heart. I only connected the parts in place. It was the quirk you strengthened over the years that brought you back. Bakugo starts walking and asks who the hell is the glowing child. He thought it was All For One based on what was happening and attacked him without even thinking. And this is probably the part that many people were expecting that we were going to get an explanation for how Bakugo was able to revive himself. And it's confirmed most likely in the spoilers that that is what happened and that it wasn't necessarily Edge Shot doing it. And I'll get into my personal grievances with this within the actual chapter review proper. Based off what we get with the translations, I'm not 100% sure on what they're trying to imply, but there is a little bit of scientific evidence from what I've seen that actually explains how he was able to do this, but you're going to have to take with a grain of salt and just chalk it up to anime logic BS. But Even so, this is still a very interesting moment for Bakugo's character, and the fact that he was able to, in a way, revive himself, very much akin to what happened with Tomura in the First War. So just getting this information in this chapter explaining how Bakugo revived is something that we really pretty much needed for us to really understand whether or not what happened with Bakugo was justified or not, and that there is some ground to say that it is, but also the counter can also apply as well. But even from there, we get a little bit more into the text spoilers, especially towards the end, where the next line of text spoilers say that All Might confirms that it's All For One and asks Bakugo to come closer. Since he can't move due to Stain's quirk, it's broken, but it will at least serve as a splint. I call this gauntlet Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite, and gives him the support item. Bakugo smiles. All For One is looking at Bakugo, but he realizes it's a waste of time. He needs to transfer the copy of his quirk to Tomura, but anger is taking over. He remembers Genist, Edgeshot, the Big Three, Endeavor, Hawks, Jiro, Tokoyami, Kami, Inasa, Makia, Mount Lady, Mineta, and All Might. The wind should be blowing my way, thinks All For One. Bakugo then appears next to him, shouts, I'm your final boss, and unleashes a giant explosion right in his face. All For One remembers the second One For All user once again. Bakugo says that he's here to, quote, step in when Deku can't handle it all on his own, just like he said during his apology. End of chapter. And yeah, from the ending of what we're getting with the text spoilers, the final boss is actually Bakugo relative to All For One, and how he makes a reference to his apology, which ties into the idea that what he's doing right now is making sure that Deku isn't fighting alone and taking everything upon himself. As well as we're getting a little bit more understanding of what's going to be happening with All For One in this moment, and how Bakugo is probably going to be the one to actually take out All For One, because All For One was so much consumed by his anger that he couldn't immediately act in this moment. As well as just that small moment of Bakugo smiling, of All Might calling out his name, which makes sense because he has been recognized as a hero by the person and the man that he looks up to most. But yeah, from this point on, this is probably my favorite part of the text spoilers that we've gotten so far, as well as some of the images that we've seen. And I think that this is going to be a very interesting, but also decisive chapter for what we've seen, and I'll go into that a little bit more into the actual review proper. But I will go into that more in the actual review proper. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for the spoilers for right now. And let me ask you this, what did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And are you okay with how Bakugo was able to be revived? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!